Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to review a couple of John Lennon films, TV films really. Having reviewed most of the Beatles films apart from Let It Be, which I'm waiting to come out later this year hopefully. So I'm going to review this. It comes in one nice DVD together. This DVD contains Imagine, the 1972 movie that John and Yoko made, and Give Me Some Truth, released in the year 2000, which covers the same period, and I'll talk about the differences in a minute. But the film Imagine was basically to celebrate the release of two albums, Imagine from John and Fly from Yoko, which if you notice has the same font there, and this is signed by Yoko as well. And then the gatefold. I can recognise Ringo and Jim Keltner here and John Lennon, but I can't recognise this guy playing the bass on here on the left. It looks a bit like Paul McCartney, but I'm sure it's not. Klaus Voormann plays bass on the album, and I don't think it's him. So anyway, so this film was 72 minutes long originally, and it was pretty ahead of its time in concept, because it was the concept of making music videos other than for the odd single was fairly new at the time, and basically what Lennon was doing in a kind of ahead of its time way, and with Yoko, is to record videos for every song on the album, and that was not to become commonplace for a good few years in the 70s. Maybe in the late 70s it was done more often. One thinks of Eat to the Beat from Blondie and Back to the Egg from Wings as two examples there. But this was much earlier, 71, or released in 72. But having said that, the videos are not really, with a couple of exceptions, they're not really John singing along to the song or lip-syncing the lyrics. In fact, the only footage of him singing is actual real studio footage, which is actually better than him lip-syncing in a video. But many of the songs were not filmed. For example, It's So Hard was recorded earlier in the year, in February 71, and that was not filmed. Well, there's no footage of it released anyway. I Don't Want to Be a Soldier from these sessions was not filmed, or there's no footage available. And Oh Yoko at the end of the album, the only footage that we're able to see here is John Lennon and Phil Spector attempting to do the harmony vocals on that track, and John's getting very impatient with Phil McDonald, the engineer, who can't seem to locate the correct bit of the song which they're trying to do, and John's cuts him short a few times and is getting mightily pissed off. It's quite an interesting thing to see. Phil McDonald, who was one of the engineers on some of the Beatles album, including Abbey Road, and would work with George Harrison throughout into the 80s as well. So yeah, it starts off, the Imagine film, well, it's hit and miss, as with many John and Yoko projects. It's got some fine moments, and it's got some self-indulgent, not so good moments. It starts off admirably with the now world-famous promo video for the Imagine song, with them approaching the door of Tittenhurst, then vanishing, and then it cuts to John playing at the piano, and then Yoko opening the blinds, and then sitting at his side for the last verse and chorus. This is a timeless video. John clearly knew that this was the standout track on the album, so he made sure he did a proper video for it. That's the only song which he does a proper video for on the whole album. And it's probably the best moment in the film. Crippled Inside is interesting because he's showing what's interesting about this film, and I'm going to kind of go to the other film, Give Me Some Truth, because I forget which bit was in which film, but Give Me Some Truth has more kind of rehearsal footage, and more studio footage and studio chatter of them discussing how to arrange the songs. And I think for Crippled Inside, on the Give Me Some Truth film, think it's Tariq Ali comes to visit Tittenhurst Park and is sitting down at the kitchen table, and Lennon says, "Oh yeah, I wrote a song called Crippled Inside," and it goes like, and he sings the verse, and Tariq Ali is pretty impressed, and then they talk about the imagined song, and John talks about that, and then he goes to the piano. I'm jumping around all over the place here, but I'm just remembering the best bits. He goes to the piano and teaches Nicky Hopkins the song Imagine, and they discuss whether they should have two pianos on it or whether Nicky Hopkins should be playing an octave higher, whether it needs drums, that kind of thing. Interestingly, Nicky Hopkins doesn't end up playing an octave higher on the title song, although there is an attempt to do so on I think it's on here. There's an attempt to do the Imagine song. If not an octave higher, I think there's a harmonium playing along. It doesn't work. I think the finished version is the definitive one. They got the right sound. But interestingly, Nicky Hopkins does play an octave higher on the track "Oh My Love." So that concept was not lost and works very well on that song. And that's another song where they discuss the arrangement with George Harrison in the studio. Fascinating to see John and George together in '71. And George is playing this rather jangly electric guitar rhythm and saying maybe it's going to be a bit too jangly, and they do a rehearsal take and it is definitely not appropriate for the song, so he quickly replaces it with a more appropriate electric guitar. And then they do a run through, and the video, that's probably the nearest to another promo video that we get in this Gimme Some Truth film, because whereas the original Imagine film doesn't really have promo videos as such, just little bits and pieces here and there, like Jealous Guy and Gimme Some Truth. But on Gimme Some Truth, they've attempted to come up with a proper promo video using all the studio footage, and there is a lot of studio footage available. If you think about it, there's no other 70s albums from any of the solo Beatles where the sessions were so well documented, and one is thankful for that. If not for the original Imagine movie, which is a bit, as I say, a bit self-indulgent, a bit all over the place. But for the studio footage of John singing How, and the vocal to Give Me Some Truth, and the vocal to Jealous Guy, it's just wonderful to have. And as I say, no other solo album so well documented. Can you imagine if Ram was this well documented and we had all that treasure trove of McCartney recording Ram in the studio? That would be wonderful, but it's not to be. So John and Yoko were pretty religious at filming everything that they did around this time. Become less so over the years, but in the early years of their relationship, they were filming an awful lot of their life together. And just before they left England, so there's some wonderful shots of Tittenhurst Park in Ascot, which was the scene of the final Beatles photo session, August 22nd, '69. And when John moved to the States, he would sell this house to Ringo, along with the recording studio. And then subsequently, Ringo sold it to some rich Arab millionaire who completely gutted the place, and it's totally unrecognisable now in terms of all the stuff Lennon put in. Not sure if the lake is still there with the boathouse and stuff. So what else can we say about the original movie? Well, it does rather generously cover some of Yoko's tracks from the Fly album. It's not her most accessible album. Tracks like Mine Train have a video to go with it. Midsummer New York is quite a decent rocker with Lennon on guitar. Don't Count the Waves is also featured. We have some fairly tedious pieces in the Imagine film, such as the Whisper piece where Dick Cavett and John and Yoko are whispering in each other's ear for about 5 minutes, a bit pointless. And the scene of them playing pool, which lasts at least 5 or 10 minutes, again, completely pointless. It's pretty obvious none of them can play, and they're just hitting balls at random around the table, and I don't really see the point of that. There's another scene where they're playing chess and eating the pieces, which is quite amusing, I suppose. But in general, the best thing to say about the Imagine film is the nice footage of John and Yoko at the time, clearly at the height of their relationship, and strolling the grounds of the house, rowing the boat in the lake, and then some footage in New York City when they first arrived, of them down by the harbour, and on the beach in New York. And then there's an alternative cover shoot for the Imagine album before it became this. It was a picture of John, a colour photo of John with the eyes, with the sky blue in his eyes through the glasses. That was not used, but interesting to see that as a, you know, they brought it in as a full test pressing, as it were, and it was looked at and admired. But then I think Yoko ended up taking this final picture, the front and the back. So on the Gimme Some Truth DVD, and this comes in a very nice double package. That's the poster from the original album there, and then some very good sleeve notes, some pictures. Andrew Salt was involved in the Gimme Some Truth. It was also involved in the Imagine film from '88, which featured some footage from the same sessions. And then 10 years later, Yoko said, "Well, can you revisit some of that footage and make a kind of special on the making of Imagine?" So that's what Gimme Some Truth was. Came out in the year 2000. It's the original film advert for the film, and some good sleeve notes from Yoko here, and yeah, all you need to know really about the films. And as I say, this is before the days of promo videos, really. I mean, other than for singles, album tracks didn't really have promo videos, so very important to have this, particularly since John is gone. But even if it wasn't for that, it's an important historical document of a classic album. And thank you for watching. See you next time.